Again, my name is Mark Osterman. I'm the Adult Learning and Engagement Manager at Vizcaya Museum and Gardens. And I'm going to talk briefly about a project we're doing on 3D documentation to enhance conservation, interpretation, and accessibility. This project was, or is, funded by the Knight Foundation. And it grew out of us sort of trying to be nimble and adaptive. And so we had an interest in using 3D documentation for preservation purposes. And we reached out to local universities and also a local tech firm that had been pitching us on an app project. When they heard that we were interested in experimenting with photogrammetry and drone work, they kind of jumped in and were interested in learning about it themselves. And so we had one university experimenting with us, doing things pro bono, and then we also had this tech firm. And then the Knight Foundation came around looking for ways that museums were using technology to enhance visitor engagement. So we're sort of able to just jump into this project. Just a little context here. So how does this fit into sort of our strategic documents and our digital guiding principles to tell Vizcaya's story, promote access, and engage audiences? We started to realize that photo documentation could really do all of this for us. We have been utilizing it for preservation purposes, but really became interested in how we can adapt these into more interpretive ones. I will not go through all of these, but again, this project sort of satisfies at least some of these bullets for us. It digitally documents, preserves, and promotes our legacy. It leans towards things being universally accessible, and that's for this project in particular. And so what I highlight will show an aspect that is not physically accessible to our guests, and we're able to make it virtually accessible. And clearly, this kind of project, depending upon how you approach it, can foster some really amazing partnerships for you. So in terms of 3D documentation, we're experimenting with two forms. One is laser scanning, the other is photogrammetry. Because of time limitations, I'm not going to go in depth of these two technologies, but just know we're actually combining the two and using sort of a hybrid and trying to leverage each for how it can best sort of serve our purposes. This has created a lot of challenges for us in essence. So what can 3D documentation do for us as an institution? Vizcaya is an historic home located on Biscayne Bay, and we are susceptible to a lot of environmental conditions. And so with 3D documentation, we've been looking at how we can measure surface loss, how if we do laser scanning over a period of time, we can start to predict rates of deterioration, how we can analyze effects of sea level rise, obviously measure objects and structures. So laser scanning allows you to do surface measurements up to a micron. Aid in expert understanding, we're able to expand and look at certain objects beyond what the naked eye can do. Obviously, as we transfer this into interpretation, enhance engagement, and the idea is to improve accessibility as well. So in many different facets, and that includes using this data to create 3D prints that can be a tactile engagement or a teaching collection. So I'm just going to highlight one aspect. You're seeing here an image of the Disgaea Arch. This is a stone barge built about, I don't know, maybe 20 meters out into the bay. It is it's made out of a base of cement, but then it's clad with oolithic limestone, which is a very soft, porous stone, highly susceptible to water, salt, and air erosion. So it's in a horrible place. So it's very relevant for us to 3D document this aspect of the sky and try to capture it. And as you can see, being in the water, it's not accessible to our guests. These are just some closer images of it to get an idea of the texture on the surface, what it looks like. These are some archival images. It was used as sort of a plaything for guests to Vizcaya. It had, you can see here, this wood trellis summer house. It had plumbing, electricity, so forth. So when we decided to document it, to the bottom left you see a predetermined drone flight path. On the top right you see a virtual rendering of what the barge could have looked like in 1917. And so we started thinking about how we could use these technologies to tell this story, the challenge of conservation and preservation we have. This is an image that really just outlines some of the complexities of the drone photography that was used to photograph the barge. And these are some images in poetry of us developing the interpretive tools. So the one that's higher up, you can see these dark spots. Those are actually holes within the that didn't come through with the laser scanning, so that's where we started to use a hybrid between the two technologies to fill in the spaces. So the bottom image shows the filler. These are some more details. I don't have time to go into it. We have this beta site. So the idea is that this is on a large touchscreen interpretive panel, and you can touch these objects, spin them around, look at them. There's annotations that give you information. And we're also promoting the idea of doing renderings of what the aspects of the barge look like in 1916 when it was constructed, and in 2017. These are just some quick images of thinking about what the interface may look like for a large screen kiosk. You would touch on one of these tabs and enter into the experience. This is an older version of the interface. This is a new one that we're experimenting that's a bit cleaner. You get an idea of the barge, you would sort of spin it around, and then you have these options on the bottom. We're also starting to tell the story how severe storms and hurricanes have an effect on Vizcaya and building upon that. So with that, I'm going to close there, but just to mention that this entire project, part of the Knight Foundation is the idea that it could be shareable or even replicable. So all of the code and all relevant information related to the challenges that we had on this project are uploaded to GitHub, and that's on the Vizcaya Museum and Gardens Knight Foundation project. Thank you.